Good to have you with us on the 9 p.m. edition of the Urban Debate. We're going to shift the focus now to an important topic, the issue of COVID orphaned children or abandoned during the pandemic. Children who've lost one or both of their parents in this pandemic. We're going to talk about their future, who's taking care of them, what is the plan, and just how big is this issue. The child rights body, NCPCR, has now submitted an additional affidavit in the Supreme Court in the ongoing case, where the affidavit submitted by NCPCR reveals some concerning details. About 8,100 children have been orphaned during this pandemic. These are just the records which exist with this body. The reality may be far worse. Over 92,000 children have lost either of their two parents. 92,000 children have lost either of their two parents. 396 children abandoned between April 2020 and August 2021. Abandoned. 1 lakh children in all. This child rights body says 1 lakh children who are in urgent need of care and protection. Of this, about 40,000 of them are in the age group of 18 to 13, 17,800 in the age group of 4 to 7. Now, for several weeks now, the central government and individual states have been looking at this issue. We've ourselves had multiple conversations about what should our strategy be, how to rehabilitate them, how to take care of them, to financially support them. Is there somebody within the family who can take care of them? Will they need an additional support? Do they have to be rehabilitated elsewhere? Should they be put in child shelter homes? Should they be put up for adoption? At what age? What's the policy? All of this. And of course, do we even know how many are out there who need our help? If you just look at the state-wise data as well, the biggest chunk actually comes from Maharashtra, then Gujarat, Odisha and Delhi. 15,400 children just in the state of Maharashtra are in need of care and protection. Gujarat's the other big state with 9,000 children who need our immediate attention. Odisha, 8,498 children in need of care and protection. Delhi is the other one. Now, the Supreme Court, while hearing the case, also has made some important observations, saying that ensure that their education is not disrupted, at least in the current academic session. A very big challenge, I must add. Everybody's academic session, education calendar has been disrupted. For children who may have lost their parents, one or both, it becomes even more difficult. The Supreme Court also said that the states have to protect these children, that the states and union territories must talk to private schools to see if there can be a fee waiver that's possible, that the states can bear the fee if the schools are not willing to waive it off. They've also said that the states can request the center for funds under PM CARES funds. Some of the observations that were made. Let's pick up from these and see what can really be done and where is it that the government support, the private sector, individual citizen support, NGO support is required. Over 1 lakh children that we are talking about. I say good evening to Sandhya Bajaj, former member of the National Commission for Protection of Child Rights, Isidore Phillips, Director for Divya Disha, Clyde Crasto of the NCP, China NC of the BJP, NV Vasudeva Sharma, Executive Director for Child Rights Trust and former Chairperson of the Bengaluru Child Welfare Committee, Dr. Anshula Vajit of the Congress Party, also joining me this evening. First up, actually, let me go across to Sandhya Bajaj. Sandhya Bajaj जी, ये जो 1 लाख बच्चों का तो अभी हमें इंफॉर्मेशन मिली है, शायद और भी हो. इनका प्रोटेक्शन और इनको सपोर्ट किस तरीके से किया जाए और उसमें सरकारों का क्या रोल हो और बाकियों का क्या रोल हो?
जी, मैं सबसे पहले तो स्वागत करना चाहूंगी माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट के इस ऑब्जर्वेशन का कि जो उन्होंने कहा है कि इन्हें जल्दी से जल्दी किया जाए, जबकि पहले पीएम साहब ने भी ये घोषणा करी थी कि हम बच्चों के लिए जो कोविड से अफेक्टिव पेरेंट्स उनकी डेथ हो गई या एक की हो गई या दोनों की, हम उनकी पूरी मदद करेंगे। उसको बहुत अच्छी तरह से कंटिन्यू किया है सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने, और जो उन्होंने ऑब्जर्वेशन दी है उस हिसाब से अब मैं यही सोचती हूँ कि बहुत जल्द बच्चों को न्याय मिलेगा। बहुत जल्द वो बच्चे आइडेंटिफाइड होंगे जो बच्चों को सही में चाहिए पूरी मदद, और उनकी एजुकेशन किसी भी तरह से हर्ट ना हो। जिस तरीके का ऑर्डर किया गया है वो उस अपने आप में एक बहुत बड़ी बात है। उन्होंने कहा है कि अगर इस दौरान में, कोविड के दौरान में, जस्टिस राव ने ये कहा है अपने फैसले में, अपने ऑब्जर्वेशन में, कि आप चाहे वो कोविड से हुए या वैसे उन्होंने पेरेंट्स खोए हैं, आप कोई डिफरेंशिएट नहीं करें। उन बच्चों को जल्द से जल्द एजुकेशन में कहीं कोई कमी ना आए, उनके पलने में कोई कमी ना आए, उनको हर चीज मिले, राइट टू एजुकेशन के साथ साथ राइट टू शेल्टर, राइट टू डिग्निटी, राइट टू एवरीथिंग। मैंने उनका फूड का, हर चीज का जिस तरीके से ख्याल माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने किया है उसको मैं बहुत बहुत स्वागत करती हूँ। और यही कहना चाहती हूँ कि अब हमारे देश में स्टेट वाइज या डिस्ट्रिक्ट वाइज किसी भी तरह से इसको बहुत जल्दी से क्रियान्वित किया जाएगा, क्योंकि जब जब सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने इंटरवीन किया है उस चीज को बहुत तेजी से लिया जाता है। और बच्चों का बेस्ट इंटरेस्ट ऑफ चाइल्ड यही है। बच्चे इंतजार नहीं कर सकते, बच्चों के पास इतना समय नहीं कि वो वेट करें, और उनका दिल पहले ही टूटा हुआ है। उस दिल को एक बहुत अच्छी तरह से जोड़ा गया है। अब सिर्फ मॉनिटरिंग की जरूरत है कि हाँ, हर बच्चे का तक ये न्याय पहुंचे और पूरी मॉनिटर हो कि कहाँ कहाँ के हमारे जो बच्चे हैं, हर स्टेट के, डिस्ट्रिक्ट के, उनका डाटा पूरी तरह से आए और वो डाटा को हर बच्चे तक वो पहुंचे। हमारी जो मदद है स्टेट की, पीएम केयर फंड से पहुंचे। इसके अलावा जितने फंड्स हैं हमारे पास में, बच्चों को देने के लिए कोई कमी ना छोड़ी जाए। इस तरह का जो हमारा फैसला आया है उसके लिए बहुत 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 धन्यवाद है।
जी, जैसे आपने कहा ये तो सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कह दिया, अब इसको आगे ले जाना सरकारों की, राज्यों की, उनकी जिम्मेदारी है। शाइना, लेट मी स्टार्ट ऑफ विद यू. And what is the role that the states can play here in actually supporting these children and helping them in whatever needs they have right now? Shaina NC, good evening to you. The question to you. Yes.
Yes. So I think the most important is what the Supreme Court said. We need to assimilate. Now, need for care and protection is one thing, but assimilating into the mainstream is the most important. And obviously, we have to ensure that not just orphans are sheltered, but even homeless are sheltered. And when we talk about 3 square meals, this is a part of the Honorable Prime Minister's entire vision plan, which is secure for the future of our children through correct education, empowerment of safety, and of course to eventually make all our children Atmanirbhar. Now, in that reference, I think it's important to also understand that at a time of a pandemic, when you have education which is hampered even for our mainstream children, this is something which is a priority issue, but we have to ensure that our orphans get the care and protection along with the basic security of food and the best kind of services available in the current scenario. Now, we do know that in the current scenario, also if you take states like Maharashtra, Kerala, etc., there have been a lot of cases where children have lost their parents, sometimes 2 and sometimes 1. So if they have been abandoned in that sense, there is a larger interest of even counseling, which I think we seem to be missing out at this juncture. So we have to focus on that too.
Okay, so multiple aspects here. Clyde, let's start off with what is it that Maharashtra has already done. You've been, we've had these conversations earlier as well. Individually, some states have announced schemes and financial support schemes specifically. What's happening on ground?
Yeah, Tanvi, this is a very sensitive issue, and we need to look at it very carefully, and that's what the Maharashtra government has been doing. And if you read over the last few days, there are a lot of initiatives that the Maharashtra government has taken. For example, to start with, every child who has been orphaned during the COVID period will get a 5 lakh fixed deposit. Now, this 5 lakh fixed deposit will be given to the child when he turns 21. We're trying to move it to 23 so that they get more interest and more money that comes through. And so this money will be deposited in the child's account. And when the child turns 21, as of now, he will get the money, he or she will get the money along with the interest to have a secure future. But during this whole period, these children will get free education and every proper, all their needs will be taken care of. Monthly allowances which will be given. There is a certain amount right now which will over the period of time keep increasing, and there will be more money that will be given to the child to take care of them. So the thing is, Maharashtra government is doing a lot of these initiatives. A task force have been formed under the district collector, and they've been collating data as to find who are these children, where are they. We trying to meet them, getting their details together, and making sure, very importantly, every child needs a family. And just to bring the child who's lost probably both their parents into a child care center or child welfare center, it is preferable that the child is with the family, maybe an extended family or a close family member. So we are looking at all these aspects. There is a Bal Sangopan Yojana. Under that Yojana scheme also the children will get education. And it's not just that. These children, when they grow up and when they're 21 and 23, when they get their fixed deposit money that they were given to them, the government will make sure at that point of time that they'll even get the jobs. Through skill development, they will be trained. So these are the things that have been taken care of by the Maharashtra government. And let me tell you something which my party NCP is doing also. For example, there's an initiative started by our MP, Mrs. Supriya Sule, where we call the Rashtravadi Jivlak. Now, Rashtravadi Jivlak is an initiative where all of us, all the cadre of NCP, once we know who these children are who've been orphaned, once we, along with the district collectors, and we find out who these children are, we will sort of give them a moral support. We will try and meet them regularly, see what their needs are, where they are getting stuck, or if they have any trouble, we'll try and help them out. Maybe, in trying to counsel them or be like an older brother or a sister to these children. And even if they need, if they're stuck somewhere, and just sort of make them feel, they are not alone. There's a family, there's an extended family that's going to take care of them. And make sure that whatever they have been promised, they give. So Rashtravadi Jivlak is another initiative by my party, which we are trying to meet these people. Our Rajya Sabha MP, Fauzia Khan, also has written to the Prime Minister saying that, even the PM Cares Fund that comes to the children should be open to all the kids, not up to a particular age. So these are the initiatives that the Maharashtra government and my party together we are doing. And we will continue to do so. And as days go by, as we identify more issues, more problems, we'll try and work on it harder, make sure that these children they don't feel that they are alone or they don't feel left out.
Okay. We've now spoken about the larger plan that needs to be there. I want to specifically talk now about those who've been orphaned, have lost both their parents, and are completely now dependent on an external member to help them out. Mr. Vasudeva Sharma, good evening to you. What should be the policy there? Rehabilitation within their own families, is that a real possibility for many of these cases? Do we have to look at adoption or shelter homes?
Okay, thank you. Thanks for this debate and for taking this subject. First of all, as you have rightly mentioned, the state governments as well as the center have to draw information about how many children are there who needs this kind of a reach and help. Right now in Karnataka, what we are experiencing is that the government is conducting a census about who are surviving and how many people have died. For example, they are going from house to house, looking at whether the voters are alive. At the same time, we are also demanding or asking the government to conduct a census of how many children are missing for any reason, whether they're dead or migrated, or are they missing from the area where they were normally living. The second question is about orphans and semi-orphans and other aspects. Right now, Government of Karnataka, like all other governments with the central government directions, they have considered all children who are orphaned, not just because of COVID, but any other reason, even suicidal reasons, if a child is orphaned. Right now, the concentration is to provide kinship care. with the family extended members, whether it can be a mama or mommy or uncles or even grandparents. Sometimes there are some friends who are taking care of it. So the child welfare committees at the district level have a very big role to play, along with the DCPU, District Child Protection Unit. So to take up any plan, first of all, we should be knowing how many children are there who need this kind of a support. Alternative family or institutional care, which is the last resort, or financial help. Right. In another NGO movement or NGO idea which we have developed is to bring together some of the like-minded NGOs and develop a monitoring body. We have called it as the Makkala Mitraru, Friends of Children. We are not joining hands in the rehabilitation package, but to see that the families who have orphans or semi-orphans to get the right information about the government schemes. Our friend from Maharashtra just now mentioned about monthly stipend or a deposit, which the child gets back at the age of 21 or 23. Or it can be a reservation, or it can be a school fees, or even a kind of a waiver of school fees, etc. All this information has to reach the children and their families. We are developing our network across the districts and reaching out to taluks. So all these cannot happen unless there is coming together of a Department of Rural Development, Department of Social Welfare, Department of Women and Child Development, and Department of Police as well as Education. So let us not consider putting children in institutions,
Yes,
but to see that they get kinship care and hand-holding for a longer period. It won't end next year, but we have to think about longer period, another 10 years, 15 years to come.
okay. Before I go to Anshu, let me also bring in Isidore Phillips. Isidore, do you agree with this, this kind of an approach where we look at not putting them in institutions, but some kind of a kinship support system, and the states step in for financial support for education and a future fund?
Before I speak, I think one, compliment the NCPCR for undertaking perhaps one of the biggest surveys of children. I think much needed. Compliment them for this thorough exercise, for all the states participating, and also for welcome the Supreme Court judgment. Saying this, I think the previous time when we spoke about this, we also spoke about the continuum of care. I do agree with Vasudev Sharma. I think as the Juvenile Justice Act very, very rightly says, institutionalization is the last resort. But we also look at the continuum of care that is available for children. Institutionalization is the last, but we also look at kinship, we look at sponsorship, we look at foster care, and then the last is this one. So it's a whole continuum that we're looking at. That is A. Second one, I think when we look at orphanization, we need to look at what is happening to the child. I really welcome the suggestion of saying, yes, we are taking care of education. Yes, we are offering financial incentive. What about the psychosocial support? When child leaves, when child loses somebody above him or her, a parent or both the parents, who's actually taking care of that particular child? In terms of, are we also looking at creating the psychosocial support system, the ecosystem for the child to be able to survive? And I think this is something, and I think the NCPCR's message is very clear, saying, yes, we are there, we will take care. The Prime Minister is saying the same thing. The Chief Ministers are making a statement like that. But is it reaching the child there? Saying, yes, we are there, nothing to worry, somebody's going to take care of that. But who's that somebody? That needs to be visible to that child. So there needs to be this whole psychosocial support system that we need to evolve for the child. The third thing that I would say that is extremely important right now is the impact of pandemic on children, the fear, the anxiety that we are talking about. What about tomorrow? What about tomorrow? Yes, the financial support is there. Who's the nodal officer in case they require something? Can the extended family reach out to somebody? Who is that visible support? Are we talking of the DCPU? Who in DCPU? And I think it needs to be a government officer at the district level. We cannot be saying only the district collector. There needs to be a visible government officer who is accessible for that particular person. district perhaps can become too big for a child who is orphaned, a family that is struggling to cope with the loss of their near ones. Who is it that they will meet? That is the third thing that I will say. The fourth thing, it's good to talk about pandemic and orphanization. We need to be able to look beyond that, saying, yes, the children who are impacted by pandemic, all of them require support. Where are we? Are we supporting them enough? And I think it's the pandemic has impacted children across the spectrum. I think it's about time. I think the way NCPCR swung into action, the way governments are swinging into action, children, their needs, we will have to look at it from a larger point of view. The Juvenile Justice Act, the framework is clear, and I really commend the NCPCR. The title of the report, Care and Protection. And I think care and protection, there are myriads ways of looking at it. And I think it's high time we look at care and protection holistically. And I think it's time that we give a very holistic, programmatic representation of what care and protection would mean to children who are impacted by pandemic.
Okay, Anshula, Vijit, we're going to talk about what does care and protection really mean in terms of actually delivering it to those who need it right now. But what is the role, Anshul, that you see states playing here? NCPCR may have taken the lead. Many of the states have made announcements, but it's actually what we do on ground and how quickly we're able to deliver this help to those who need it.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. But I first of all want to start with complimenting the Supreme Court for their compassion and their concern. It's really a welcome decision. And also for this data that is being collated at the moment. I mean, I think that more data needs to be acquired here. I think there is also, we don't know how accurate it is. I think it's always subject to revision. So this process must go on. But really what the Supreme Court has done over the past couple of months, and also the High Courts, as they've been continuously monitoring the progress of the pandemic and how it has affected people, children, how it has affected migrant labor. In fact, one of their more telling judgments was about how actually, midday meals should be provided to migrant labor. So they've been continuously auditing and scrutinizing the actions of the executive to see that everything is okay. They've been directing, they've been giving statements one after another, they've been cajoling, they've been reprimanding where it was necessary. So I really welcome this. One of the important things that must come out, and what the states are doing, what the Congress states are also doing, is also getting data, additional data, accurate data on how many orphans there are in that. And that is really one thing that has been, the Supreme Court has again said, has asked the states to give additional data, to collate the data who is benefited from the programs which are already been in existence, and who is likely to benefit from that. What has the state already done? So I think that is a welcome suggested directive by the Supreme Court, and all the states will have to give a response to that. The other thing is, the PM Care even comes to this. I think this was mentioned by the Supreme Court, that the modalities of the PM Care, they did announce on the 29th of May that they're going to take a substantial burden of looking after those who have lost one parent or both parents, or those who've been abandoned or surrendered. And what have they done about it? Go to the website. There is no clear information on how the number of promises that was enlisted by PM Care, which remains this kind of an opaque body. Nobody knows. It's an unregulated body. What are the different applications of that with regarding this program? They've said a number of things about children. When they reach the age of 18, they will be given a stipend till they reach the age of 23. Well, they will be given a large amount of money. But nothing is clear. Nothing is clear how many people they've actually helped.
Yeah.
So the government also. So what was suggested was that this requires an integrated approach by the central and the state governments. Now, if the central government does not come out with all the figures and doesn't play its part in doing which is something so critical, which is the moral and legal obligation of the state to look after its children, then it will be a job half done. So
no, I agree with you, but I think this is also an issue which is far too important to let it fall through the cracks, because the two sides can't get together and work together. And if the center won't, the states need to. At the end of the day, they too are responsible for the children in their own states to collate data at your own level, to plan a scheme. And since you are the one planning the scheme, you will know how to implement it and how to implement it most effectively. I say good evening to Sonal Kapoor, founder CEO of Protsahan India Foundation. But Sonal, before I come to you, Clyde Crasto has been wanting to make a point. Go ahead, Clyde.
Yeah, Tanvi, you've been asking, what can we do? What more can we do in this matter? I mean, I've heard everybody out, and we are just two political spokespersons here. I think that the need of the hour right now is to come together. Whether it's your government or my government or your party or my party, it's the time to come together. And like someone mentioned, how does the child know whom to go to, or is there a person identified? Like, we are working with task force and district administration and local bodies that are helping people out and to identify these children and bringing them together. I think across the country now, when in a situation like this, and particularly for children, everybody needs to come together. Like the Supreme Court says, data has not been put in the Bal Swaraj portal. The data is missing. We need to collate data. We need to come together and make sure, like, for example, a public representative, he may not be part of a state where his party is in government, but he can always help the incumbent government and give data from his area or from his constituency and say, see, these are the children that are there who are now COVID affected children. We need to, take care of them. So I think across the country, whether it's the Prime Minister or the Chief Minister or the common man, we need to come together and work together in this situation, which is, like I mentioned earlier, very sensitive. So I think it's about time we get together, keep politics aside, and at least in this situation, make sure that we have identified all these children, make sure that they get what they need, and very importantly, that human touch needs to be given to these children.
Okay, but let's talk about the practicalities of it. What is the actual problem that we are facing on ground, and where is the disconnect there as far as the policies are concerned? And for example, and I'm going to just give this one example, benefits under the PM Cares can accrue only after district magistrates approve, that benefit and that this person is eligible. Only 16% of all the applications that have come in so far have been approved. There's about 418 applications. Only 418 children have actually got the benefit out of the 2,600, which by the time this data was put together, was actually 2,600 applications were put in. So Sonal, let's talk about some of those actual, real life problems which exist on ground that need to be bridged.
Tanvi, I'll just start with just today morning, an internal team meeting. मुझे इतनी बड़ी बातें नहीं पता. I don't understand policies and things like that as much. I would just want to narrate one simple incident. My child protection officer from the ground, and this is urban slums in Delhi that I'm talking about. I'm not talking Odisha, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Rajasthan. I'm talking Delhi, slums in Delhi, West Delhi to be precise. An 11-year-old, she cuts her hair haphazardly. She cuts her clothes haphazardly. क्योंकि उसको डर है कि वो कभी स्कूल वापस नहीं जा पाएगी. She's scared that she would probably never be able to join back school again. Somebody before me spoke about the psychosocial care, right? Even before in a pre-pandemic situation of things, more than 1 crore of children needed, care and protection. The civil society, which has been the child rights bodies across the country that have been constantly putting this voice out. Even on a normal day, 4 lakh children were struggling in 9,000 odd orphanages in the country. So this is not a pandemic problem. This is not a COVID orphan problem, right? Like we constantly say. When tsunami happened, there was no conversation about tsunami orphans, right? When earthquake happens, there's no conversation about earthquake orphans. Every time a major disaster or any sort of emergency has happened, children are the worst hit because there's no nobody listens to them. Also, the fact when you talk about data being captured. Is the data captured as just, as an objective study for the data to be captured, or is there a longitudinal study which says, okay, as an impact after 6 months, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, are we that long-sighted enough to say that, yes, we have captured, understood and analyzed where and how our children are suffering? Somewhere where we see the impact, we are looking at Protsahan. In fact, we are looking at a massive mental health crisis that the children are going to face and have already started facing. Schools are still bothered about how the exams are going to be conducted next year, how the unit tests and assessments are going to be conducted, the gaps in learning outcomes. Nobody is talking about the fact that the child who's not eaten enough for the last 1.5 years because the family is insanely in debt now. We have done pulse check reports on the ground, Tanvi, constantly since the last year, since the first COVID wave hit. We have seen a massive rise in the begging cases. We have seen constant rise in the incest cases. When we speak to the larger organizations, the larger bodies, government, non-governmental, media, XYZ, we've been told categorically, Tanvi, that this is a story of incest case. This doesn't look good in our newspaper in the morning, right? So I think when we are so selective about how we represent the case of care and protection for children in the country, and we are selective about only COVID orphans, which is probably 5 to 8% the part of the larger problem, the 90, 92, 95% part of the problem is children, just being hungry. We have reported so many cases, and this is just urban slums in Delhi that I talk about, where children are being put up for transactional sex. वो थोड़ा सा सेक्स वर्क करके आती है, she gets 5 kg आटा, 2 kg चावल in return. This is the kind of care and protection emergency that we are facing as a country, and the government needs to start trusting the NGOs. There are some fantastic schemes, but who are these people who will make sure the schemes go to the right places and the right kids?
Yeah.
The local NGOs, the grassroots NGOs, start trusting the NGOs.
Yeah, actually, I was going to raise that as one of the key talking points, and Isidore Phillips, to bring you in on this as well. The role of the NGOs, various groups who are out there already working at the grassroots level, are they being involved in these processes even by the individual states?
Yeah, I think this is one thing. I think she brought it out very, really well. I think what is important, as one of our earlier speakers, a political spokesperson, said, it is time for everybody to come, but we need to also understand the unique role that a CSA, civil society organization, or an NGO can play. The strength of an NGO is connecting with the people down there, and they have the ear to the ground. And if we do not bring in an NGO now at this particular point of time, validating identification becomes a challenge. And I think it's extremely important to see NGOs as partners in reaching. That's what when I said care and protection, we need to kind of demystify it, and we need to give it a very visible structure for that, where NGOs will have to start seeing NGOs as partners in the whole process of reaching out to children. And as she said, yes, hunger is an issue. Yes, families have lost their income. Yes, there's a lot of impact on the children down there. And we are talking about one particular segment saying, yes, the impact on orphanization, parents' loss. Yes, this is also equally important. But how do we kind of reach out? And I think an NGO's role, Childline, is successful in the country, primarily because it is a partnership between the ministry and the NGO's role. And it is a marriage of both the strengths of both the partners coming together, the government and the NGO. And it's about important, how do we kind of replicate this kind of models in terms of reaching out to the most vulnerable children. And I think pandemic has accentuated the vulnerabilities of children, brought it out to the fore. And if we do not want this to be exploited by people who need to be there, if we do not want children to lose the race, it's high time that we bring in NGOs as partners. Yes, the identification did involve the DCPU, but I think it's not enough. We need to be able to bring in the larger force and the strength of NGOs into this particular exercise.
Anshul, that's a point that, almost everybody who's in this field makes to me, which is that we need to use our NGOs much better on ground than we are right now. And the problem is so great, the more the hands, the better it is, and we'll never have enough hands. But that doesn't seem to be happening. Anshul Avjit.
No, that's absolutely true. I mean, I completely agree. I think one of the observations of the Supreme Court was that the children are exceedingly vulnerable and they should not fall into undesirable hands. And I was reading the memo that was given by the NCPCR in their website, and it did express its concern about a number of how to deal with the problem, how to deal with this acute problem with reference to NGOs and other bodies and organizations, and some of them which seem to be, getting into adoption and other things without processing things legally and properly. This was mentioned on their website. So, of course, we need to trust NGOs a little more. We need to be also a little more careful and cautious about it. It's a two-way thing, because this was even mentioned in their website. I'm not just saying it. There's a lot of information about. We need all the hands we can get about it, because we have to deal with the problem. Another thing about this problem is that a lot of these people have lost one parent. So unless you have a kind of a socio-economic backup for that parent, unless there is money given to them, I mean, how are you going to deal with it? Because the institutionalization is the last resort, which has been said. You need kinship groups, you need support groups to help them. You need guardians, you need members of the family who are there to help them, but they need money to do it. So how are you going to do it? So I think the demarcation that you will only help those who have, have this particular kind of, only going to schools and helping out with notebooks doesn't help at all. I mean, there has to be a broader, more integrated approach to helping families who have lost, a significant earning member or something else. So an important integrated approach. Also, the other thing is, all very well to say that, there's an echo that I can hear, so I'm unable to.
Allow us to just fix that, and then I'll come back to you. Yeah, okay. Mr. Vasudeva Sharma wanted to make a point. Go ahead, please. Glad I'm coming to you next.
Yeah, probably for the first time we are hearing a common voice. None of us are opposing anybody. I'm really very happy that we are all concerned about the situation of the children. Last June, we filed a PIL in the Supreme Court requesting the Supreme Court to direct the states and the center to take action about the status of children of migrant workers. In that, what we had expressed is the fear of child marriage, child labor, trafficking, pushing children to begging, as well as sexual abuse and other kinds of abuses that children may have to face. Well, when the Supreme Court sent notices to the states, I'm very, very sorry to tell you that none of the state governments has so far responded to the Supreme Court about what is the status of the children and what they are going to plan to take care of the children. Well, we have suggested that. I too agree with Sonal when she said, why are you raising a hue and cry about children who are orphaned because of COVID? What about in other situations? And every day children are getting abused. Every day children are orphaned. But this is a special situation wherein the attention of the whole country has been drawn, and everyone is woken up and they're taking into care. Well, with the coming together of several forces and the convergence of forces, we need to look at developing child care plan. This child care plan, as we see in the Juvenile Justice Act, to see that the child will not fall out of the care and protection, fall out of the social security. Then the child should not become a victim of child marriage or child labor, etc. So for that, I repeat it, we just cannot say this process will end in the next 6 months or 1 year. Yeah. It's a longish program, and we have to bring in all other issues, all other kinds of children into this gamut.
I completely agree with what the point that Sonal had raised, and you are speaking about, Mr. Sharma. But I would also agree with what you said then, that the country's attention is on this. The Supreme Court is talking about it. The Prime Minister is talking about it. NCPCR seems to be doing something. So whatever it takes, if it is the pandemic's name, then that might be it. But if we're able to help children right now and get the governments to commit to a long-term plan, then that would be great. Yes, Sonal, you wanted to say something.
Tanvi, just one larger point, when we are talking about building and changing systems, and I agree with some of the people who have said that everybody needs to come together and work for this. We also have to remember that, the larger funding, whether it's from the government, whether it's from the CSRs, whether it's from the donors of any kind, for that matter, institutional, non-institutional, simple donors who give 1,000 rupees or 500 rupees. There is always, we need to understand, there's always a need for needs-based funding, or a rights-based funding, right? A lot of the care and protection work that the Supreme Court highlighted in the judgment that we're talking about caters to the rights-based funding or the rights-based amount of work. And for that, there is not much funding in the country. There is a massive funding gap because also the donors are scared to invest, or the funders of any kind for that matter, mostly CSRs or corporates, because you have to get the SDMs involved, you have to get the local child lines involved, you have to get into the structure and the system and the government of doing things. So I think just the larger understanding of when you're working to build stronger and deeper and more sensitive and empathetic psychosocial care systems or any kind of care systems for children, especially in the context that we're talking about today, we have to understand the funding should not just be for the needs-based where ration is given or school bags or pencils or copies are given, but also in the rights-based framework of things where you invest in people, invest in organizations, invest in systems that are there for doing restorative justice work, that are there for following up on POCSO cases. It takes time. The law might say that 8 months, 1 year, the POCSO case should be dissolved or whatever, taken care of. Is it really done that way? And in the entire pandemic scene, we have seen the number, like I said, the number of begging or incest cases that have gone up, right? So if you're not investing in the larger justice systems, and let's also remember, access to law is very different from access to justice. So if you're not understanding that as a larger system, we are failing our children still and still every other day.
Well, I completely agree with you. I have a question that I wanted. Yes, Clyde, I know you wanted to make a point. If you can just hold on for a minute, because Sandhya Bajaj, I had to specifically ask her on this since we've repeatedly talked about care and protection. Sandhya Bajaj जी, ये जो NCPCR की भी रिपोर्ट है, उसका भी नाम है care and protection. इसको कैसे डिफाइन किया जाएगा और क्या प्रायोरिटी होनी चाहिए जब इतनी सारी अलग समस्याएं हैं?
बिल्कुल, केयर एंड प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट तो ऑलरेडी बना हुआ है और बहुत ही मजबूत एक्ट है, परंतु मैं ये पूछना चाहती हूँ, बल्कि आप भी तो पूछ रहे हैं, लेकिन 2020 से ये शुरुआत हुई है इस समस्या की, तो कोविड के इसमें केस कितने इन्होंने स्टार्ट किए हैं? इसकी कोई ऑडिट करने वाला है? कोई सोसाइटी, हमारा समाज, किसको ये अधिकार है कि वो जाके ये देख सके कि किसको मिला है, किसको नहीं मिला है? और बच्चों के लिए आप रेजिडेंट वेलफेयर एसोसिएशन है, छोटी से छोटे गांव लेवल से चलना पड़ेगा, ब्लॉक लेवल से चलना पड़ेगा, तब जाके आप बच्चों के बारे में सिर्फ पता लगा पाएंगे। और अगर आपने उनको 2 दिन, 4 दिन, 10 दिन भी छोड़ दिया तो गलत हाथों में जा सकते हैं। रिश्तेदार जो हैं उनको जहां वो जाना चाहते हैं बच्चे, वहां ना जाके कहीं और, मतलब वो चाहे दादा दादी के पास रहे लेकिन पहुंच जाए कहीं और। माने किससे उनका प्रेम है, क्या है, ये पड़ोसी नेबर भी बहुत बड़ा एक हथियार बन सकता है, लेकिन सभी को इस्तेमाल करना होगा, पूरी तरह से समाज को जुड़ना होगा, तभी जाके ये भी स्टेट पर छोड़ दीजिए, या मैं तो कहती है पूरी राष्ट्रीय नीति होनी चाहिए, पूरी राष्ट्रीय नीति होके मॉनिटर करे। कोई पॉलिटिकल मुद्दा नहीं है, कोई बच्चे जो है ना कहीं वोटर हैं ना किसी के सपोर्टर हैं, बच्चे तो बच्चे हैं, वो लोग, उनका अधिकार चाहिए। बच्चों को 18 साल तक आप देते हैं, अभी आप कह रहे जी बैंक में हम 5 लाख जमा कर देंगे, कोई कह रहे जी 10 लाख दे देंगे, आप जमा कर रहे हैं, लेकिन आज का खाना मिला उन्हें या नहीं, अभी का उनको शेल्टर मिला है कि नहीं, अभी जो उनको प्यार मिला है कि नहीं, उनको प्रेम चाहिए, उनको केयर चाहिए। अगर नाम ही केयर एंड प्रोटेक्शन है तो कौन सी प्रोटेक्शन उनको दे दी गई है? इंडिविजुअली देनी होगी। एनसीपीसीआर बहुत अधिक काम कर रहा है, सभी लोग काम कर रहे हैं, उस पर मोहर लगाई है हमारे माननीय सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने कि आप लोगों को इस तरीके से चलना होगा कि कोई बच्चा वंचित न रह जाए, हर बच्चे तक ये पहुंचे। वैक्सीनेशन कैसे पहुंच रहा है घर घर में, किस तरीके से वोटर पहुंच जाता है, वोटर कार्ड छप जाते हैं, आधार कार्ड बनते हैं, सब कुछ हमारे देश में होता है। अगर कहीं सिस्टम है तो सिस्टम करना पड़ेगा कि कॉर्पोरेट सोशल रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी के जो लोग हैं वो कितने लोगों को कैटर करेंगे, कितने लोग जो हैं सरकार उन्हें देखेगी, कितने लोगों को एनजीओज देखेंगे, जो नियरेस्ट एनजीओज हैं वो किस तरीके से बच्चों तक पहुंच पाएंगे। वो तो बहुत जल्द उनकी पहले से ही पकड़ होती है, जिनकी पहले ही पकड़ हो, स्लम्स में, मॉडर्न एरिया में, कौन से एरिया में है, हैं जहां बच्चे बहुत अधिक हैं, एक पेरेंट भी गया है तो भी कानून ने ये कहा है, सुप्रीम कोर्ट ने ये कहा है, और प्राइम मिनिस्टर ने भी ये कहा है कि एक अगर पेरेंट भी अगर चला गया उसका, क्योंकि दूसरा जो है वो पंगु बन जाता है, यानी जब फादर चले गए तो मदर का होना, वो कमाती नहीं, उसके पास में कोई साधन नहीं है, तो समझो वो भी ना होने के बराबर हो जाता है। और अगर मदर चली गई, फादर को बच्चा देखना नहीं आता है, उसे नहीं मालूम कि बच्चे को कैसे पाला जाता है, वो क्या चाहता है। तो माँ बाप की अगर दोनों में से किसी का भी डेथ हुई है, और ये कोविड ने जिस तरीके से 20 से लेके अब तक परेशान किया हुआ है, तीसरी लहर आने की और आशंका है, तो अब इस बारे में हमें डिले तो एक सेकंड भी नहीं करना है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट का ऑर्डर आने के बाद में तो हम लोग को ये सोचना है कि हमें उन्हें जवाब देना है। सुप्रीम कोर्ट मांग रही है इस बात का जवाब कि कितने बच्चों को अब तक आप पहुंचे हो, कितने बच्चों को आप कैसे पहुंचोगे। ये सब उन्होंने ऐश्वर्या भाटी जो इस केस में पेश हुई है, एडिशनल सॉलिसिटर जनरल, उन्होंने बहुत अच्छे तरीके से अपना पक्ष रखा, परंतु साथ में कोर्ट जानना चाहती है कि आप करोगे कैसे, जिस तरीके से करना है आप डे टू डे इस पर होना चाहिए सिस्टम। एक दिन भी अगर बच्चों को छोड़ दिया तो बच्चे मालूम नहीं किधर पहुंच जाएंगे, कहाँ हो जाएंगे।
आपने दो बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट बातें बोली संध्या बजाज जी। एक तो आपने जो कहा कि जहाँ जब विल होती है, जब करना होता है तो हम इस देश में कर सकते हैं, आधार बनाना हो या वोटर आईडी पहुंचाना हो या वैक्सीन लगानी हो घर घर जाके, तो हम वो कर रहे हैं। उसी तरीके से जो ये बच्चे हैं उन तक भी हमें पहुंचना जरूरी है। लेकिन इसमें राज्य कितना रिस्पॉन्स कर रहे हैं, एक एक लेवल पे, एक एक स्टेज पे सुप्रीम कोर्ट को ये पूछना पड़ेगा। क्लाइड, दिस इज माय क्वेश्चन टू यू, व्हाट मिस्टर Sharma was earlier raising, that the states didn't even respond and come back with the details when the Supreme Court sought it.
Tanvi, there are a couple of points that I wanted to make, but I'll answer your question. For the Maharashtra government has got all the data right in front of you. You've also, read about those data. So we've been providing all the data that is required, and whatever further data collated will be given out when and required, and it'll all be there. Now there are 2-3 points that I wanted to make, and kindly hear me out, is that we were talking about NGOs. Yes, of course, NGOs will play a very important role, and I think they can be a big support to any government in any state or the country, because they also have the grassroots connect and everything, so they will be of very good help. Now the other thing that I was trying to say is that a lot of states, I've been reading all the data and everything, is that all the children are not getting these kind of protection or the money that required, because some states have different kinds of kind of schemes and everything. But I would like to say this here, since we're talking what can be done, like how the Maharashtra government doing, whether both the parents have lost their lives during the pandemic, or one has lost before the pandemic and the other one has died due to an ailment, or if somebody has died before and now died because of the COVID issue, I think all these children need to be taken care of. Their education, their future, everything needs to be secured. And if you need to secure the future, like the Maharashtra government doing across all the states or across the country, you need to put in some money in the bank accounts of the children, like in terms of fixed deposit, because I've been reading a lot of data. A lot of states are providing allowances and some kind of money measure every month, but there is no fixed deposit kind of scheme in every state. So I think this should be blanketly used across, like Sandhya ma'am was saying, just giving money at one time, fixed deposit is not going to be enough. That's a fact. That's why the Maharashtra government is giving monthly stipend or monthly allowance to these children so that they can run their daily life. So I think fixed deposits and allowances that can run their daily life should be a scheme, or should be something that should be practiced throughout the country in every state. Only then can the future of these children be secure, because once they turn 21 to 23, that's the time when the money will come out together along with the interest, and they will have something to look forward to and start all over again. Because if their parents were alive, probably they would have done the same thing, and they would have, these fixed deposit put down by their parents would have matured when they grow older. So now is the time for the governments of the country, of the state, to be a parent to these children.
Yes, absolutely. And like you detailed it out, Clyde, from immediate needs to the long-term support that is required to each and every. In fact, I will go a step forward and say, and even the data isn't necessarily only talking about children who've lost their parents to COVID. It's just the data that's come out from during the pandemic period. And that's how the governments need to see it. Your schemes and your announcements and your support can't just be designed to say only if you've lost somebody to COVID, then we will help you. Because every child who's gone through a tough time in the last 1.5 years and will go through that will need our help. And so that COVID definition cannot be a restriction by the states. And I think some of the states are actually doing that, which is problematic. Completely out of time, though. I appreciate each one of you joining me on this conversation. It's been an extremely insightful conversation, and I hope we're able to do many more of those so that people are aware. You and I are aware of just how grave this problem is. It's always been a big challenge for us. It's multiplied and magnified during the pandemic, and it will take each one of us. You heard Sonal Kapoor about not having enough funds. We can do our bit too. Our companies, our businesses, our families can do our bit too. These children are the future of our country, and they need our help. They need our help before they're turned into beggars, before they're turned into malnutrition, undernourished, uneducated future of our country. They need our help before they are married off at the age of 12, 13, with child marriages now being reported from many parts of our country. They need our help before they're pushed into labor and child labor, or before they go missing. For each one of those reasons, they need our help before it damages their mental health and there is no way back for them. Mental health amongst these children and these age groups is a big issue today that not many of us are even talking about. These are the things that individuals, institutions, NGOs, and governments need to be aware of and need to come together and resolve. Thank you for joining us.